Okay, here we are again. I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to import an object dictionary for the first time. And we can see the progress down in the bottom right. This object dictionary is consistent with the firmware in my GVI. Now it's imported. We can see the parameter menus have been populated with a default menu structure. If I go to communication setup, I can see some of the parameters that are defined. So we've got producer heartbeat here set to 100 milliseconds. So these values are the values in the project, and they are set according to the defaults that were defined in the object dictionary. If I change these values now in this project to say 99, and then I re-import the object dictionary, the same object dictionary now, if I re-import it, these values will remain at 99. So the default values are only used for a new project. So if I go back here, you can see these values are still 99. Okay, so now we've got an object dictionary imported. We want to find our inverter on the CAN bus. So if we go to the scan button, or via the communications menu, the scan button here, we can see a little dialog box appears. So it's gone off and it's used the 500 kilobits bit rate. Well, I know my inverter is actually 250 kilobits, so I will change the bit rate and rescan. And you can see now that it comes back with my inverter. So I'm going to select node ID 6 and select OK. So having done that, the tool has gone off and read some other information about my inverter, including the firmware, the serial number, the Parker GVI item number, and the bitrate name and node ID. I can refresh this using this little button here, which will go off and reread them. We are actually connected on the CAN bus now to the inverter. So we can see the CAN open status here, which is pre-operational, and we can actually change this and reset the inverter using these buttons here. And down at the bottom, we've also got an emergency messages section in the status bar. So if the inverter issues any emergency messages, then they will appear here. So since this is the first time that we've this is a brand new project, we should probably just read all the parameter values up from our inverter. So we can use this button here to do that. And when we click on this button, we're actually going off and using CAN open, we are reading all the parameters that are defined in our project. And you can see here we've got some errors. These are consistent with my hardware. I have some hardware which is has some issues, partially because it's not connected to a motor. So I'm going to ignore those. If you wanted to take those errors and investigate further, then you can click on this button here, copy them to the clipboard and paste into a Word document and go in and investigate further. And in this case, I'm just going to click OK. So now we have the project with the values of our inverter. So we can see here we've got an inhibit time of 200 and the producer heartbeat has been reset back to 100. It was 99, as you might recall. So now I'm going to actually save this project. So I'm going to click project and save as and give it a name. So my second project, and click save. And we'll see that the new project name is reflected down in the bottom right. And if we go to the start page, we can see that it appears in my recent projects list. Okay, so we can now actually go online and start monitoring and seeing the values on in our inverter in real time. So the tool provides an online mode. If you look at the bottom here, you can see currently that it's in offline. But if we click on this toggle button or go to the communications menu again and select go online, then another dialog box will appear. And this gives us three options. There's a none options, which basically says go online, don't do any reading or writing of parameter values. Read from the inverter, which is read the values from the inverter into the project, very similar to the read all parameters method. And then we've got this write to inverter, which basically allows you to write the values from our project down into the inverter. We need to be careful doing this because, and the caution states that, this option will override the values in your inverter. So you have to be careful that the project reflects the values that you actually want in the inverter. So I'm just going to select none and go online. And when we go online, we now see that the toggle button has changed to online, and we have a green border to indicate too that it's online. We also have a little area here in this panel appeared showing us that we've got SDO updates occurring at 25 milliseconds. So we're polling parameters, the visible parameters, at 25 millisecond intervals. And so if we go over here to this parameter menu, we can see that we've got 9 parameters here, which is reflected in this bracketed number here. So that's the number of parameters that we're currently polling. And we've got this flashing green circle, which maps or reflects what we've got over here to indicate that polling is active. So at 25 milliseconds, we've got each of these parameters being updated at approximately 200 or 175 milliseconds. So every 175 milliseconds, the inverter values are being updated. So if I change to a different menu, if I choose Resolve Sensor, for example, we now have 2 parameters being polled, and we can see that this value here is being updated at approximately 50 milliseconds now, because at 25 milliseconds and 2 polled parameters, it's coming round every 50 milliseconds. Okay, so we can also change the values in our inverter. So if we go to the Setup menu under Communications and look at our producer heartbeat, we can actually set that to 200 milliseconds by putting the value in our text box and then writing down that value to the inverter. So if I click that button, you'll see now that the value in the inverter is 200 and the value here is 200. What happens when we write is that we write the value down to the inverter and then we immediately read it back up. So if for whatever reason the inverter said 200, I'm not having that, I want 250, this value would be 250, and then I would read the 250 back up into this text box here. These text boxes also limit the values that you can actually write. There are min and max defined, as you can see down in the bottom here. This producer heartbeat has a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 65,535. So if I write a negative number, for example, a -9, and try to write to the inverter, a little error message will appear and the write won't take place. So in order to clear that, I can just read the value back up from the inverter. Also in this parameter menu view, we've got the error and event logs. If we click on this here, and we can get a view of the current error log. So we can see that the last error that we've got is a frequency above 599 Hertz, and we've got various other errors here appearing. You'll note that these that there's a 0 in brackets here to indicate that there are no polled parameters, and that is indeed true. On the error logs and event logs, we don't actually poll these. We have to physically refresh them using this circle button here, this refresh button, and which is also down in the bottom left. So if we click on that, it will go off and read the error logs. We can clear the error logs too if we click on this dustbin button here, and we can now see that the error log has been cleared. The active events doesn't clear this way. The active events is a kind of a rolling set of events and is not easily cleared, but the error logs can be cleared in this way. And if we now refresh those errors, we might well see, no, there's just the one error there at the moment.